Need for Speed Unbound is the newest entry into the series that was developed by returning developer Criterion Games. Criterion are known for developing the render ray engine that was prevalent throughout the 2000s, and probably powered some of your favorite video games of all time, like some of the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games, Call of Duty Finest Hour, many Rockstar titles like Max Payne or GTA, and of course the flagship IP, the Burnout series. Easily the greatest arcade racing franchise of all time. Burnout was the franchise that put Criterion on the map. With their flawed but humble first attempt at a standard arcade racer that slowly grew more of an identity with every new release, culminating into what would be their arguably greatest arcade racer of all time, Burnout 3 Takedown. With its gameplay loop that is highly addictive, and its over-the-top carnage displayed through its takedown system, fast sense of speed, crashes and damage model in its memorable rock soundtrack, all at a solid 60 frames per second. They further iterated on Burnout 3's framework with Revenge, which was way more accessible since its Xbox 360 version is now backwards compatible with any Xbox released after it, and then Burnout Dominator, which was a spin-off, however only released on the PS2 and PSP. They finally changed the formula again with their first forte into open world racing, which was Burnout Paradise. Taking place in Paradise City, an area freely explorable with tons of landmarks, stunt areas and other cool hidden areas to find, and a for its time pretty expansive multiplayer with tons of features and activities to take part in, like custom races or free roam challenges, but also other events from single player added into online like Stunt Run, Marked Man, Road Rage, and a Cops and Robbers mode that was online exclusive added via a DLC. I guess you could kind of consider Burnout Paradise being one of EA's proper first attempts at a live service game, at least on console, supplying it with post-launch content like free bike DLC, but also premium priced car packs, new events and challenges, a pass to controller party mode, and of course I cannot forget the map expansion, Big Surf Island, featuring some of the coolest stunts out of any racing game, like the bridge under construction that leads to Big Surf Island, or the infamous ski jump. You could make an easy case for Burnout Paradise being the best open world racer ever made, but also being EA's best open world they have in their track record. The Burnout series has been on a hiatus since then, and Criterion have had their first few attempts at making a mainline Need for Speed entry, the first being the Hot Pursuit 2010 reboot, showcasing graphics that hold up pretty well today, an outstanding sound design, a well-constructed cop vs racer dynamic, and a stellar soundtrack. It's just generally a very well put together Need for Speed title and can be experienced at a bargain bin price today. Most Wanted 2012 was their second attempt and was a huge letdown when it first got revealed, because while Hot Pursuit was a faithful homage to the original two, the new Most Wanted game very clearly wasn't. Not only a complete reboot, but also reinterpretation of the original, representing none of the urban art direction the original had, story, characters, gameplay or customization. It felt a lot more like a Burnout Paradise 2 than a Most Wanted 2, the latter of which was actually the original plan but probably got changed due to time restraints. However, some of its qualities have gotten more and more appreciation recently. A year later after Most Wanted, they ended up being a co-developer on Need for Speed Rivals, alongside the newly formed Ghost Games. Just like the Hot Pursuit series, it's another entry that goes for that cop vs racer theme, but was received much more negatively due to its atrocious PC port with the 30 frames per second cap, an edgelord storyline, short list of cars compared to its predecessors, long freaking host migrations even in 2013, and just overall feeling like Hot Pursuit 2010 2.0. At this point, people just wanted something that went back into the black box style formula, reminiscent of Underground. And so Ghost Games delivered. Need for Speed 2015 was a full-on reboot to the series, very much inspired by Underground, which was generally received with kind of mixed results, but very positively within the NFS community. Because while it definitely steered the franchise into the direction the fans wanted, it was extremely bogged down by its atrocious handling system and always online requirement. 2 years later we got Payback, which was a little more positively received by the general audience, but absolutely hated by its fans. Because while it fixed the always online requirement and the handling, it was also the one that introduced loot boxes into the series that blocked away certain customization items, which, you know, is the whole thing that defines Need for Speed today. Especially back in 2017 when the whole loot box and microtransaction epidemic has gotten really bad, with even government officials putting certain publishers under a microscope and questioning those predatory gambling mechanics.
For all of the games we have on the market that have a randomized content mechanic, a surprise mechanic, a loot box, I have no qualms that they are implemented in an unethical way.
Need for Speed Heat was probably the only NFS from the modern era where things didn't go horribly bad somewhere. Most people agreed that it was a good baseline to work something on, but yet again, its potential got cut short. With only getting a few cars with the Black Market update, and much later getting a crossplay update. And also with Ghost games getting axed and added to the long list of studios eventually eaten up by EA. And after a 4-year break, that's how we arrived today, to Need for Speed Unbound. The game takes place in Lakeshore City, a place clearly based off real-life Chicago. You can create your own custom character with a range of designer and other known clothing items to choose from. EA put a surprising amount of effort into representing famous fashion brands into the game's marketing, way more than a racing game usually should. You'll find some pretty expensive stuff like Balmain, Versace or Palace, but also some more regular stuff like Vans, Fila or Alpha Industries. I mean, this is nothing new, Heat had character customization with real life brands as well, but it's ultimately something I don't care too much about. It's not like GTA where I see my character all the time and actually like designing outfits for 20 minutes at a local suburban. After you've designed your character, you can choose between 3 different starter cars. You'll be then thrown into the introduction where you deliver the vehicle to a certain shop. You meet 2 characters over there, Yas and Rydell. Rydell actually runs the shop and his whole gimmick is that he's too old and doesn't understand technology.
And let me guess, we got hacked.
I just clicked on one link she sent. Oh my god, baby panda sneezes.
It's cute. And then you have Yas, who doesn't have much of a strong personality other than being a snake that will turn on you later. After hitting up the shop, you get up there to win some more races, grind some cash and tune up your car a little bit. Later, Yas calls you for a quick car delivery job for a guy named Alec. A guy who the game swears is important because he pulls all the strings in the background, but you never actually see him, so it does not matter. You race to the drop-off, but to my character's surprise, nobody is there.
Shit, yes, the garage alarm just went off.
Somehow my character still cannot put 2 and 2 together and drives back to Rydell's place, wondering what could have set off the alarm. We arrive and, not to our surprise, it's a setup.
They emptied the lot. Wait here. Shit!
And after one of her partners literally exposed her involvement in the setup,
I don't know that dude.
Yeah, let's go!
my character is still trying to defend her.
Rydell, she was with me all night.
And none of the 2 even bother thinking about securing that last car before she can leave with it.
Did she just take the car?
Kia, she took everything.
2 years later, we're still working in the shop, building up the place again. Rydell went into a deep depression and has started reading self-help books. We're now doing taxi delivery jobs. But don't expect anything on Sega level. This is not Crazy Taxi or Yakuza 5. On our way, we encounter who is easily, unanimously agreed the worst character in the entire game.
He was all like, if you know, bro. And you know what I said? Bro!
I have no idea who wrote these characters and all of these lines, but it feels like a parody of some 30-40-year-old wanting to make fun of millennials and Gen Zers, only forgetting that nobody talks like this and it does not come off as funny at all. I get when something is supposed to be very intentionally corny, like this.
First I'm gonna take your ride, then I'm gonna take your girl. Get ready for that.
And while old Need for Speed was also pretty corny, yes, it was also a lot more bearable because there was so little of it. These characters you interact with just never shut the fuck up. Whenever you enter the garage, they need to talk. Immediately after you leave, they need to talk. In every single race, your opponents just comment on the stupidest, smallest shit sometimes.
Did I just overtake you?
What happened to just hanging up on calls? Or voicemails? I would have muted the speech volume at some point, but then I would completely miss what the hell is even going on. During the story there are these campaign adverts and interviews for a new mayor in Lakeshore that play every now and then in the game's radio.
Hey Shan, paid for by Waterside Construction, making Lakeshore great again, one corporate headquarters at a time.
One of which is trying to tackle the issue of street racers causing havoc in the streets. Yet the racers somehow see themselves as the victims in this scenario and the mayor is in the wrong?
Sure, some street racers have side hustles that are bad for the city, but most of us do it because this is an art, okay?
Seeing as she was caught doing 45 in a school zone, she really is in no position to judge. Maybe it's time for Lakeshore PD to take a look at the corrupt criminals running these streets, not the ones driving fast on them.
45 in a school zone? The mayor's a hypocrite.
Even some of the civilians are telling her to shift priorities to something else. I mean, with how everyone can evade these street racers at this point, I guess it makes sense. Personally, I'd rather have DJ Atomica return and give his comments in between songs. I wonder what he's up to nowadays.
Does anyone else around here feel this This unnatural urge to drive into anything that's yellow. I mean, there's just something satisfying about it, isn't there?
The ending, however, is what confused me the most. To my understanding, Yas claimed that she had nothing to do with the robbery at Rydell's place in the beginning and didn't come back to make it right immediately after, because why would Rydell give me a second chance after all this? But conveniently left out the part where she's supposed to explain why she drove away without Countach anyway, and the player doesn't even pick up on it. After winning the Lakeshore Grand and getting our car back, we drive together with Yas back to Rydell's garage, and after trying to apologize, he just takes her in like it's nothing? She and her crew stole millions worth of customized race cars from us. That Lamborghini looked straight out of a cyberpunk film. Now everything is all good and the family's back together again? Girl, fuck you, I'm holding this grudge forever. In Unbound you progress through 4 race weeks, with a qualifier at the end of the first 3, and the Lakeshore Grand Finale in the 4th. Every race day is separated from day and night, and there's no continuous day and night cycle. Your goal is to make as much money as possible through challenges, free roam stunts like drifts, jumps, or speed zones, or individual events sprinkled throughout the map's meetup spots. There's also car deliveries you can do that Rydell or Tess occasionally call you up for. The game makes you think that there's a good variety of event types you can compete in, but there's actually a lot of overlap between them. There's the standard races that include your usual circuits and sprints, but the game treats specific routes like endurance races, which are just longer races mostly on highways, head-to-head events, or the Corner King events that are just normal races with a lot of turns, as different event types. Alright. Then there's the takeovers, which are point score events where you drive a given route and earn a high score against the other drivers, by drifting, hitting checkpoints quick enough, hitting jumps, smashing into barrels and other debris. They're actually pretty similar to the Speedcross events from Need for Speed Payback, which were released as a DLC shortly after launch. Drift events naturally take that framework and reduce it down to just points from drifting and hitting the checkpoints, with less jumps and no debris lying around. So again, a ton of overlap in how the events are structured, even though it's way more forgivable in this instance. In terms of actively racing other drivers, there would be a lot more stuff you could work with. The drag events that were last seen in Payback could have made a return, time knockout events like in Need for Speed The Run, the speed trap events which only survived the black box era could have made a return, which are also a personal favorite of mine, or maybe bring back the highway battles from Undercover. The Need for Speed series has gone on for so long, there's a lot of material you could pull from. You don't even have to come up with anything new. It also doesn't help that certain events are still locked behind certain car classes even after the main story is finished. Most events you will partake in require a buy-in before you can compete in it. You can also place bets on other drivers and see if you can beat them to earn an extra amount, which increases or decreases depending on the performance difference between you and the other driver's car. There are also these high roller events which earn you a much higher payout, but you only get a payout at all if you only land in first place. The game leans even harder into this risk and reward progression system that Heat and Rivals already introduced. So naturally the money you earn isn't immediately deposited into your account, you'll have to bank it by visiting a safe house first. So while the structure may seem familiar from Heat players, it does have its noticeable differences. In Heat you could still freely choose between grinding during daytime or nighttime. However, you had to grind for reputation and money separately from another. Reputation at night to unlock the parts and cars, and the money during the day to even purchase those. It was unnecessary padding in a game that wasn't that long to begin with. So now in Unbound the reputation system has been removed entirely. So the focus is only on earning the money for the things that you need. Your earnings per race are gonna be pretty low at the beginning, as you might expect. It's the classic idea of buying a low spec car and building it with better performance parts and visual customization over time. In the first race week especially, you'll have to think about what exactly to spend your money on. On the highest difficulty I not only had to skip out on visuals, but also think about which performance parts to equip. Should I spend it on a new induction kit or ECU? Should I waste it all on a new supercharger to at least boost up that slow acceleration? A new set of tires and brakes would be a cheap upgrade, but wouldn't make sense on a very low spec car like this. One big problem, however, is how the progression system just drags on if you try to make the most out of every single session. The amount of events with good payouts can run out pretty quick, and the meetup spots where you can find these events are way too spread out from one another, and constantly driving from place to place takes way too much time. This wasn't as much of a problem in Heat because the events themselves are already spread out all over the map, letting you earn cash and reputation way quicker. In Heat you could also fast travel to more areas and also to your safe house in the daytime. Also in the nighttime if you haven't started any trouble yet. The game takes around 20 to 30 hours to finish, and in the last third of the game it feels like I'm doing the same races over and over just in faster cars. A problem also very prominent in some black box titles. Another important aspect of this risk and reward system is of course the police. They cruise around and come with a spotting system with a meter bar that gradually fills up the longer you're inside. You can also quickly take out certain police units if you're fast enough. It's an instant stealth takedown for racing games, so to say. If you do end up in a chase, there's different types of units you'll have to deal with. Standard Chargers, all-wheel drive SUVs, interceptor corvettes, undercover cameras that you cannot see on the radar, helicopters, and the off-road F-150s that somehow catches up with you regardless of what car you even drive. The police can bust you normally or take you out by depleting your health bar, which results in them taking all your money in both instances. Despite me not being a fan of the health bar, at least it's not as brutal as it was in Heat, where you would lose HP much more after being hit, and also losing a substantial amount for attacking another unit yourself, which is just completely backwards. Who the hell thought of this? Driving in a B-class speedo at Heat level 5 was somehow easier on intense difficulty than the last game was at Heat level 2 or 3 in any car. This also extends to the repairs. While in Ghost Game's last entry you only had a limited amount of repairs per run available, in Unbound the repairs are unlimited, but time gated, and the time limit can also completely reset itself after escaping a pursuit. The best methods to lose police is by hitting jumps, hitting the elevated L train in the city, or making use of the roadblocks that spawn every now and then. If the road is narrow enough, the police will most definitely hit one of their own units and sabotage their own efforts. It can also work with oncoming traffic. Every cop who wrecked himself out of their own stupidity counts as your own, meaning that you earn the nitros bonus from it even though it's their mistake. Very convenient, but shouldn't be happening. I just wish they brought back the pursuit breakers. This game runs on an engine that touts how impressive its destruction system is, however they've never even experimented or played with the idea of dynamic pursuit breakers. Really strange. Alternatively, you can resort to more experimental escape methods. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the spiritual successor to GTA 4's swing set glitch.
2440 still at large, team.
That suspect just lost us at University Central.
Suspect got away. I'm terminating this chase right here, right now.
The more heat levels you got on you, the more units are spread around looking for you while free roaming. And sometimes the amount of 5-0 aggregating around your area is just way too much. Having to hide in bushes with the engine turned off makes it feel like I'm playing a proper stealth game rather than a racing game.
That's an enemy gunship.
I'm gonna try and keep the black box comparisons to a minimum, but this is a Far Cry for Most Wanted in Carbon where I had no problem with directly facing the police head on. In Unbound the police feels way more like an annoyance I'm always trying to avoid, and there's never really a moment where I'm just like, yeah okay, let's try them, let's see how far I can go. You know, looking back on it, maybe this entire system doesn't have as much of a significance as I thought it would be, because instead of getting caught, I could also just do this. And we are back like nothing ever happened. I mean, what did you think this is, a roguelike? Let's move on to the driving physics. Unbound takes from the handling framework of Burnout, which has been adjusted and tinkered with over and over with every Criterion and Ghost Games release. So naturally, Unbound feels a lot like Heat with its own adjustments and changes that give it its own feel. The suspension system has been reworked. Going over harsh bumps the wrong way, or driving down uneven roads at pretty high speeds, will make your car more prone to spinning out than it did in its predecessors. Choosing to use the nitros while turning can also make you spin out now sometimes, which is an interesting change. Something similar could also happen in Carbon when you turn and use the nitros at the same time. You could pull off some pretty insane barrel rolls with enough experimenting. Grip turning has been heavily improved in this game. Some cars are more slanted towards grip turning than they are towards drift, and vice versa. Some hypercars are more beneficial with a grip setup than they would be with the traditional brake to drift. There's also a pretty big nitros bonus you get from grip turning. The way nitros works in this game is that you have your standard blue bar and a yellow burst meter that fills up chunks of nitros that has to be used on a certain amount of time before it depletes, and gives you a pretty strong starting boost whenever you activate it. The yellow bursts fill up through jumps, grip turns as said before, drift turns, near misses and other more audacious stunts. Of course the brake to drift method of turning has returned. It seems like, compared to prior Need for Speed installments and Burnout, that counter steering and throttle control plays a little bit more of a role here, and I think that's personally a positive, However, ultimately it feels yet again like a bunch of band-aid solutions. Drifting still feels unnatural, so to say. Almost like you're changing into drift mode with the flick of a switch. I mean, duh, it makes sense, because the tuning menu literally lets you choose how you want to enter a drift, either by gas tapping, brake tapping, both or neither. However, sometimes I cannot exactly predict how my car is going to enter a corner, as dumb as that actually sounds. And I have no idea if this is 100% a skill issue, or both, or just me being used to more realistic approaches of drifting. If I compare entering a slide in something like Forza or a Codemasters release, I can usually predict after enough practice how my car is going to enter that corner, how long I'm holding the handbrake for, and if I'm just tapping it, and so on. Unbound activates the drift for you and relies on you to prolong it and in the end stabilize it. Thus, trying to interconnect smaller drifts on a straight feels awkward as hell. And no matter how much you abuse the throttle or the handbrake, it will never feel like a natural loss of traction to me. Personally, I hope Codemasters and Criterion would just do something completely different with their next installment. I am not an overt brake to drift hater. I can enjoy games like Hot Pursuit 2010, Most Wanted 2012, and some of the Ghost Games titles despite their super arcadey way of drifting. There's already mods out on PC for Unbound that kind of encapsulate what I'm trying to look for when it comes to drifting in Need for Speed. The drift mod is still a work in progress, just like how my skills in it are, as you can clearly see, but it's gonna be real fun once it finally gets released. Heat had a mod like this as well, and I hope the developers look at something like this just as a general direction on where to go with next time. I think I have more fun drifting in GTA Online than here, and I have no idea how I should feel about that. As you would naturally expect, customization is Unbound's biggest strong suit. There isn't much that was changed from what Ghost Games already built upon over the years. And that makes sense since it's easily the best visual customization we have in NFS history and everything else that's on the market. Just like before, you can choose between front and back bumpers, side skirts, fenders, spoilers, hoods, window tints, side mirrors, trunk lids, rooftops, the whole ensemble. We can get into the ridiculous details with how expansive the RGB color selection is and the tons of materials you can choose from as well. It gets to an unprecedented amount of options unlike anywhere else. Some of the new additions are the recoloring of headlights, tinting the taillights darker, the large variety of new license plate backgrounds and frames. Bumper removals are also now possible in certain cars after they've been long requested. A bunch of flat and concave discs got added to the rim assortment as well, which are also, probably unintentionally, also contain a set of rims that can be neon colored. There were also new parts created by speed hunters, Criterion themselves or other artists that us were collaborating with, including the new set of extreme legendary customs conversions that overhaul the look of your ride completely. It's a style that not everybody's gonna be into, of course, but I do think some of them were executed pretty well. However, I did notice that there wasn't a lot of new, tamer body parts added from real-life manufacturers. Also some older body parts having disappeared from the selection despite them still being in the game files. Some of the KS kits that were advertised with the Heat Limited Edition didn't reappear. The Charge Speed BRC Widebody or the Sunline kit for the R34 have also disappeared. The Underground Mantis kits for the 350C or R34 are still in the game but inaccessible. And what is also strange is that Varo's Kite Racer kit for the 240C is also not accessible. It's a conversion kit you can clearly see in the game, so Nissan approved of it. Oh, hold on, it's gonna be available with the next update, but it's an EA Play exclusive. You cannot make this shit up. The list of cars you can buy and customize is pretty big, accumulating to 143 in total. Now granted, a large amount of them were imported from Heat, which in my opinion isn't much of a problem as long as there's enough new rides to play with. Some new appearances include the 190E Mercedes-Benz, the Lamborghini Urus, the Mitsubishi Eclipse, the RX-8, the Lotus Emira, the Nissan 400C, and the new Corvette and Lamborghini Countach. Some of these cars come with a decent amount of new parts, with the exception of the new Countach. There's not a single unique part you can apply to this car, despite the Crew 2 letting you do so, and GTA at least giving you an idea of what fictional stuff you could come up with. One thing that you can apply to every car, however, is the custom wraps you create. And the wrap editor still remains undefeated with its amount of options and approachable control scheme, which lets almost anyone create something decent out of it. It's the only livery editor out of all that I actually invest my time into. I did notice, however, while the amount of decals to choose from is pretty enormous, there seems to be a distinct lack of tuning manufacturers, at least compared to the last few games. In summary, however, I'm pretty satisfied. Need for Speed obviously knows its strong suit, and delivers on it yet again. Kinda ironic when the best part of a racing game is the one where you're not even driving. I could be sitting there building new cars for hours in this game. There were two key aspects that stood out during this game's promotional run. The new art direction and A$AP Rocky's inclusion. The new art style has definitely been a bit divisive. The game now comes with a kind of cartoony, comic-like aesthetic in terms of its character design, tire smoke and a few minor effects like trail lights. It's a mixture between that and the usual realism seen in other racing games, in the car models and environments. Others describe this as anime-like, or drew comparisons to Auto Modelista. To me, however, the effects really remind me of SSX on Tour actually. The effects personally don't bother me too much. There's some really cool you can choose from, and there was never really a moment where they became too distracting or anything. They're noticeable, but I haven't lost my overview of the entire race because of them. I think the overall reception of these effects has warmed up since the game was announced. A lot of people were taken aback by them, understandably, but it's safe to say that most of them are on board with them, or at least wanted them to be implemented differently. Personally, however, I wish they would have fully committed to this aesthetic, including cars and environments, and also might as well come up with a more interesting location rather than GTA but in Chicago. I mean, I get it. Adding some of these effects was already a pretty big gamble, as some gameplay with them turned off already garnered huge amount of interest and views. It's an unfortunate but also understandable reason why huge creative risks are usually reserved for the smaller indie titles. So I respect the overall decision to stray away just a little bit from the expected hyper-realism that Forza so popularized. In the end, it's the same idea of a urban, kind of hip-hop inspired art style direction that most Wanted 05 also went with, just with a completely different approach. The inspiration also carried over into the game's soundtrack, which is unfortunately complete ass, which surprised me considering how many good rap records even came out in 2022. And of course I cannot forget the inclusion of ASAP Rocky. Despite him being at the forefront of the reveal trailer and him doing a theme song of the game, I feel like his inclusion in the actual game was kind of a letdown. He's the guy who's hosting all the takeover events and always comments on your final placement.
I'd rather put money on my grandmother.
In race week 4 he starts joining the roster among the other drivers and occasionally leaves comments like everybody else. There's also a one-on-one event to win his car, which the reveal trailer initially showed. However, this cutscene,
you dust me in this, I'll let you have that.
Is not in the final game. I thought it was a snippet from an extended cutscene, but it was literally just made for this trailer it seems, which makes no sense to me. And there's also a delivery mission, where you need to Uber him to a specific drop-off. And the conversation between you and him couldn't be more awkward. You ask him one single thing and he goes on a whole tangent about something that almost had nothing to do with what was initially being asked. Only for your character to then provide these one-note answers. I mean, can I blame him?
I'm just as normal as everyone else when it comes to that matter. People just making it, just showing people that we're all relatable in the same sense that we all are the same in the same sense, because everybody has problems, regardless if it's economical or not. So, yeah.
Yeah, man, right?
Something about this back and forth was very suspect. I mean, people who just met each other don't usually go into introspective mode immediately. It felt very interview-like. In some moments the conversation felt more organic than in others.
Up to the height.
Oh, that I can do.
But that's funny, because from what I see, it seemed like you spent all your time arguing with your former teammate.
And lo and behold, when I got to the credits scene, it's exactly what I suspected.
Everything but fast, it actually has more of a positive perspective. And it was some form of encouragement that promoted prosperity and ambition amongst the young brothers.
They actually Kendrick Lamar Moto Man to shit, I cannot believe it.
Pop.
Come on EA, how small was the budget for this guy? Put that Ultimate Team money to use. And I don't have a problem with Rocky's performance in general. All he had to do was be himself and he did that pretty well. I'm just more frustrated with the way they implemented him to begin with. The only cool things we got out of his inclusion is his car, which is probably one of the best looking hero cars in the series in a long time, and the sound effect.
Beep 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 beep.
After you finish the story, the last thing you can dive into is online multiplayer. I'll keep it short since there's not much to talk about. The progression is entirely separate from single player. The only thing that carries over are some special cars you can win in certain events. But other than that, you choose your starter car just like in story mode right from the beginning. Multiplayer is actually as basic as it can get. You can join a free roam server with a bunch of random players all doing their own thing. If you want to take part in PvP, you gotta get to a meetup spot and start one of the playlists over there. An invitation gets sent to the whole lobby and whoever wants to join, can join. Now good luck getting a full session of players to participate in your playlist. The odds are often not in your favor. My first playlist was a one-on-one against some other random driver, which couldn't have been less interesting. The problem is that the game doesn't have a dedicated matchmaking function like speedlists for some reason. I mean sure, we cannot have everything in an online game, right? That isn't necessarily to be expected nowadays. It was only a feature in Need for Speed 2, Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit, High Stakes, Porsche Unleashed, Hot Pursuit 2, Underground 1 and 2, Most Wanted, Carbon, Pro Street, Undercover, Shift, Shift 2, Hot Pursuit 2010, The Run, Most Wanted 2012, 2015 after an update, Payback, and because he didn't have it, which is the entire game we used as a framework for our new one, then of course we cannot have it either. I mean, I don't understand it. What I also kind of miss is when the series used to experiment with creative multiplayer modes, like Cops and Robbers even in games outside of Hot Pursuit and Rivals, and also with the exclusion of drift events, which make the players feel even more repetitive than they do in single player. The game incentivizes you to keep playing and unlock new items and cars through unique multiplayer challenges like finish this many players in those car classes. And I'm definitely gonna get all of these done with how dead this game's multiplayer is. The March update was said to be one that focuses on social features. Social features that were advertised like the long requested return of free roam cops in online multiplayer, a custom designed Lotus and mirror available through a challenge, the aforementioned Kaido Racer 240C which you can only get if you give the publisher even more money, and a new secret luxury ride which turned out to be a Mercedes Maybach. Interesting choice. There's also the new hot depth free roam challenges, which are fine I guess, but I don't think anybody was asking for more free roam challenges. There were also new racetracks added to online events, but no new event types or dedicated online speed lists. I think the only redeemable aspect about this update is the plethora of fixes that are gonna be applied that many people have been asking for a long time. And well, I gotta give some huge props to the team for that. I'm just curious on how they're gonna solve this whole live service player retention aspect that they were obviously planning for. Because if we're looking at raw numbers, it's not looking too good. I mean look, I personally do not care too much. I don't need every game to be alive for like 5 to 10 years to give me a reason to play. I'm very okay with finishing something and then putting it aside. But with modern day Need for Speed, it always seemed like they were trying to do more post-launch only for their ideas to be cut short. And I honestly fear that it's gonna be the same for Unbound. Several games have had a complete turnaround in just a few months or years, but we'll see if EA even has the patience for that in this instance. The game probably sold a lot less than its predecessors, which comes with being a next-gen and PC-only release. And the game goes on sale pretty frequently for a pretty steep discount. I really thought that the 3-year development cycle would help the game feel more complete than its predecessors. On the flip side, however, video game development seems to become more and more difficult. With better hardware comes greater level of detail and graphical fidelity. The overall scope, ambitions and monetary budget keeps increasing, and crunch times for most studios don't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. Some blockbuster releases aren't even expected to release in this console generation anymore. I guess a post-launch rollout can make up for these issues, even though I'm not a big fan of it. I think this is another case of waiting until enough content updates have released and then getting it at a steep discount, just like the last 3 games that were released. EA, can you let them make another Burnout game already?